Like my owners are in their 30s and they don't use Instagram. And I was like, guys, come on.
What are you doing? But that's a big thing, right? It's like having someone that is watching.
Yeah. Well, nobody wants to see the ugly parts.
No.
Right?
Why show the ugly part, right?
Oh, gosh. I guess I also enjoy seeing what percentage of our customers are coming from different marketing streams. It's a massive trend. And never once have they come.
You're listening to the Roofing Success Podcast, a show created to inspire roofing contractors to achieve optimal success in their roofing businesses. I'm the host, Jim Aline, the co-author of the books Internet Marketing for Roofing Contractors and The Best Known Roofer. I'm also the co-founder of Roofer Marketers, the leading digital marketing agency for the roofing industry. On each episode, I sit down with industry leaders to talk about their processes, the lessons they've learned, and how to find success in roofing. Hey, welcome to another episode of the Roofing Success Podcast. Thank you, everyone, for subscribing, for commenting, for following, for reviewing, for listening. We've hit the charts on the Apple Podcast, so that's awesome. So today we have Brenna Shepherd with Rojas Roofing in the Indianapolis area. How are you today?
Pretty good. How are you?
Good. So, Brenna, you are the VP of Operations and Marketing at Rojas Roofing, but it didn't start out that way. What's your story? How did you get into roofing?
Yeah, so I think like a lot of people who end up in roofing, it was a really weird roundabout way, but I feel like mine was particularly roundabout because my whole background is in teaching education. I worked in universities, taught ESL, and I happened to move to China in 2019. I was out working in Shanghai, and I came back to the U.S. for like a trip, like a vacation in January of 2020. And then China shut down. So there was no reason for me to go back. And I kind of was very shortly after that, of course, like everything shut down throughout the country, the world, really. And I didn't have anything to do. I didn't want to get a job at that time because nobody knew what was going on, at least in teaching. And my friend, her husband is Christian Rojas, one of the owners of Rojas Roofing. And she was like, oh, he needs a helper to drive him around and like do errands and, like bring him things when he's up on the roof and stuff like that, set up the ladder. You want to do it? And I was like, all right. I mean, nothing else is happening. It's an essential business.
Yeah.
Something different to do. And I haven't left. So that was in March of 2020. Yeah.
March of 2020. Yeah, it was a crazy time. There was a lot of like, what is happening right now, right? And I'm sure I actually have a cousin who's an ESL teacher over or a teacher, an English teacher in China also, and he ended up getting stuck. Like he was not able to leave.
It was purely coincidental that I happened to leave at that time, and no joke. I was in Wuhan for a whole week in January.
Wow.
Yes. People like to joke that I was like a patient zero. I did not bring COVID to the US. But
it may have been you, Brenna. It may have been you. So you started off as a roofer, kind of just assisting the owner. Mm-hmm. And at that time, that was the brothers came together to form Rojas Roofing, right? So was that right after, right before? When was that?
So Freddie and Chris they've been working in roofing for a long time, but they were mostly subcontractors. And Freddie had decided to start his own business, which was at the time Rojas Construction. And that was in 2014 was when he started it. But then he had, gotten some customers and had a few roofs under his belt, was doing had some Google reviews and a little bit of traction. But then the two of them decided to actually put their forces together and rebrand. And that was Rojas Roofing as you know it now. And I think that happened late 2019, early 2020.
Okay.
So at the time that I started, it was really in a transition phase where it was becoming the Rojas Roofing that we know now.
All right. And then so you're helping, you're running around, you're setting up ladder, you're doing whatever whatever was necessary. How did your role kind of progress from there?
Sure. So again, I thought it was just like a temporary thing that maybe I was going to do for like a month. And so they didn't have any kind of office systems. There was no scheduling. There was no CRM system. They had done the work of getting a website, and they were getting leads that were coming in, but there was no way to keep track of any of those customers. So I decided to do some research because I was like, oh, well, this is a huge gap.
Yeah.
And I learned about this thing called the CRM, which, of course, it's obvious what it is, but because that wasn't my background, I had to learn what it meant.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's how I decided to go with JobNimbus as our CRM. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so then, you started, I guess then, did you kind of take charge of implementing JobNimbus inside of the business?
Yes. So this is a fun story. So after I decided to do JobNimbus and I told Chris and Freddie about it, they were like, yeah, okay, sounds good. I guess we need that.
Yeah.
So JobNimbus does require some true sit down, learn about this product because it is a very robust system. And so I was dabbling with it, trying to figure it out. Just the basics is really not hard.
Yeah.
But when it comes to getting into the JobNimbus system, then it becomes more complicated. So we were building out our first estimate templates at the time. And Chris was actually working on a new construction project, and he was on a roof, and I was inside the house, talking to him through the window. And I was like, so how much would you charge for this? And what items? And that's how we originally built our system. It's way different now, but that's how it started.
Yeah. And that's kind of how you start, right? You just start piecing things together and oh, okay, well, let's do this and let's do that. What did it look like before? What was, what were the guys using? What were they doing?
So Freddie was more organized than Chris. He had paper files. Chris had a brain. So I don't think he was writing a whole lot down at that time. Yeah, we didn't have any way of scheduling anything or anything like that. It was just sort of he would get a call and be like, okay, I can come on Tuesday at 10. And then where'd you write that down? Oh, on this piece of paper that's in my truck. And
that's so many businesses, right? Or business owners. And as you're kind of growing along, a lot of times that's what it is. I told you about the story of the team that I met down in at the JobNimbus Solutions Summit who were talking about their spiral. And I was like, man, I've never heard of that CRM before. And it come to find out that they meant spiral notebooks. That's what they kept all of their records in, right? And
I like that it's shorthand too. Learn on spiral. It's so challenging in those beginning times. And then, so this is kind of a lesson too for owners out there, is that a lot of times owners think that it has to always be them to do things, right? You didn't have a background in this. It wasn't your thing in setting up CRMs and doing these things or roofing, but there was a gap in the business and it was well, I can help with this, right? Yeah.
I can figure out how to solve this gap. So it's the team that people create around them that it doesn't just have to be them. And so now, you're starting to get JobNimbus set up. What were the first things that you saw that were oh, this is making this way more efficient?
Within Job Nimbus?
Or just within the business, right? Like what things started becoming, as you started like using technology and things like that, what things changed in the business? Well,
I mean, now we're in 2003, which means that I have almost 3 years worth of data on clients within a searchable system that allows me to build reports, that allows, if a customer calls and says, you did my roof a year ago, it's no longer like, well, hold on, let me go search through the files and find you. Or we don't just have to take their word for it. I mean, we do get people that call that think we did their roof and they're just calling the wrong roofer.
It's so
and
funny.
We could be like, oh no, we don't have you in our system. So the ability to keep track of the clients was the immediate thing that really, changed the way that we were able to interact within the system. And then as we built more and more things out, then we added the invoicing, which allowed us to keep better track of, how much money we're spending on different types of projects. And then we added the work orders, which allowed us to assign them to the subcontractors, and then the material orders. And now our most recent addition is the smart estimates that they built out within Job Nimbus, which is a really fabulous feature. It allows you build the template, and then it'll ask you for like maybe 5-10 numbers. If you have an Eagle view, you can just use the Eagle view numbers. It'll pull them in directly. But if you don't have an Eagle view, then you just type in those same numbers. Like, what is the hip measurement, the number of squares, that kind of thing. And it takes all of that information and it spits out your estimate in a matter of 30 seconds or something like this. So whereas before you had to type in each of the individual measurements, which was still faster than calculating it all by hand, but the new Smart Estimates template has really cut down on the overall time. And we've been able to be creative with it. So we're now adding things like, do you want to add an accent roof? We just finished all of the siding templates. So that was really big for like vinyl and James Hardy, because those are complicated.
Yeah.
And if your sales reps don't have a super deep understanding of siding, sometimes they can invent colors or put the wrong size trim on things and all that kind of stuff. So the templates have been really instrumental in allowing us to continue to grow, especially being that a lot of people who go into the industry don't have a super construction background.
Yeah. And that people get drawn to the roofing industry. It's not something they seek out a lot of times, right? So that sales rep, right? Where have you guys, found good sales reps?
We got pretty lucky with this most recent round of sales reps. So we had a lot of trial and error. I mean, really, we had some bad sales reps, some okay sales reps. And then in August of last year, we wanted a production manager. And we put out an ad for a production manager, and this guy applied that really fit sales better. Mm. And we went ahead and put an ad out for a sales manager at the same time, just to kind of be like, well, what else is out there? Like we don't want to, we thought we were getting a production manager, And then we ended up with a good sales manager, and everything has kind of improved since that point. But it was kind of almost coincidental that we ended up with two good employees at the same time.
Yeah, for sure. And so now that you have the sales manager in place, like now there's layers of these things, right?
Yeah.
The business keeps getting the layers of people. And how has that changed the structure like this with the sales team? And have they been out? Does that sales manager recruit salespeople? How do you have that structure for them?
Right. That's exactly what's going on. So before, it used to be a situation where, I have a lot of roles, right? So basically whatever is a gap gets filled by me, but then that means that other things are not getting done well, or I'm not able to put 100% of my effort into something. So it allowed me to just sort of be like, sales is not my responsibility. I don't have anything to do with it. I'm not going to check to see that your sales reps are doing what they're supposed to be doing. It's just on my end, I know my sales manager is taking care of that, so I can focus on the marketing and the operations side of things.
Yeah. It's an amazing thing to like in business when you get people that focus 100% of their time on one thing.
Yeah.
Right. As the business is growing, you're saying like, you've done a lot of things. I'm sure, Chris and Freddie have done a lot of they're filling caps everywhere. But when someone actually is able to put 100% of their attention in all the time on this one thing, it's crazy how things change.
Yeah, for sure.
Especially if you have good people, right?
Right. Yeah. Well, and that's really evident in marketing too. So if you'll allow me to toggle from operations a little bit into the other half of my job. So I did not in any way have a background in marketing, right? I mean, I think that as a teacher, you do have to sell and you have to package things in ways, so there is a background of translatable skills. Certainly the ability to present information in a grammatical way is a part of being a teacher, especially an ESL teacher. So anyways, they had a different marketing company that they worked with at the time. And this is back when I was, out in the field all the time. And I would overhear Chris's phone calls with their client success manager over at that marketing firm. And it was really evident to me that because Chris and Freddie were always focused on something else at the same time they were listening to these phone calls about marketing, they couldn't see the screen with the numbers that the lady was presenting. They were never undivided. It was always, I'm working on this thing and I'm also listening. And it became quite evident that that wasn't functional. Like, it doesn't matter how awesome your marketing team is if you're not putting at least a little bit of undivided attention onto that task. It's not going to flourish.
For sure.
Yeah. So that's one of the things that I took on also fairly early was I took over overseeing the marketing. Again, I'm not a marketer, so I don't do any of the PPC ads or anything like that.
Yeah. But that's a big thing, right? Is like having someone that is watching all of these things, right? Like you have to, and then so in that though, like in the early days with the you're not with that company anymore, but like, what were some of the things that you're like, man, this is not like what started to add up, not add up, things like that?
So once I was in the office, so I'd stopped being out in the field. I was like, I can't do this anymore. It was fun when there's nobody on the road. That was really cool. I will say that.
But then traffic came back.
Yes. So I got access to the Google Ads account and I didn't do anything with it. I would just kind of look at it, right? And one day I looked at it and I was like, all the ads are gone. What's going on? And they had been, our account had been flagged because we had some malware on it or something. But the company hadn't noticed for like 4 days, which seems like a pretty serious situation.
Yeah.
So we were like, well, it's not going that great anyways. Like maybe we should try somebody else. That was what happened with that company. And then we tried another company for a whole year and same scenario. It was like, it's going okay, but it's not that great. And then at that point I was like, I think we need to get a little more niche and go with a marketing company that deals specifically with construction. And that's how we ended up, of course, with Roofer Marketers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so in that, some of the things that we've talked about over, is like, you had to at least learn something, right? Like, and I want to put that for everyone out there, like in doing marketing, maybe you're not doing marketing, but you have to learn something about it. Like I was telling you the story of like, when I did like when I started doing like real estate investing stuff, fix and flips, this was back in like 2008, 2009, like we'd buy a house. I wanted to know, I GC'd all my own projects, but so in that, I wanted to know what went into it. So like on one job, I did drywall on one job, and I did trim carpentry on another, and I did some plumbing on another, and I did some electrical on another, and I did tile work, and I like all these different things. And I did it because I wanted to know what went into it. Right. And that was kind of like, what was your journey in learning how to understand what was going on and what was going right, what was going wrong?
Yeah. So there's a lot of free content on the internet. And so
this thing called Google, is that what you're saying?
Yeah. Well, back in the day, I mean, again, it was, everyone was just in their house. There was nothing to do. So I would get free programs, like Coursera has one. I found another one there's like a company that does mailers, and they had their own little program that taught you about marketing, weirdly.
Nice.
It's a series of platforms. Yeah. Anyways, that was kind of how I started to be like, oh, this is considered like good marketing. That kind of thing was just genuinely consuming content. And then I was able to have a partnership with a company, a roofing marketing company that was then able to answer any of those more finer point questions, which allowed me to continue building my knowledge. So it was originally like, oh, I'm learning just in general. And then again, getting more and more specified.
Yeah. So then you were able to at least be educated and go, hey, what about this? I heard about this, or I learned about that. Is that like, what are we doing in that regard? Or is that a viable thing to do? Is it not viable? So you were able to kind of interact and like get a deeper understanding of what was going on.
Right. And that's actually really important, because as anyone who is in the industry, anyone who owns a business knows, you are constantly being told by different marketing firms that your website is bad. You're not getting enough leads. Here's how we can get you 24 leads in the next month. Like, and I had a company that was like, we're going to get them all via Google My Business. And I was like, but our Google My Business is already optimized, so I'm not really sure you're going to get me that much. But I knew that, like, right? Because otherwise I could be approached by that company and I could say, oh my gosh, my marketing company is not doing a good enough job.
Yeah.
I should go and pay X amount to get them, this company's going to make up the deficit. But now I know enough to be like, that's not going to happen.
Yeah, it's a funny thing. Like, that's the way digital marketing is sold.
Yeah.
Right? So they're like, essentially they do audits, right? They'll audit and really most of the time they don't audit anything up front. They just send you the email saying like, we've audited your stuff, right?
Yeah.
And because you could just blast that out. And then they take that and then they go and then they do an audit, but they do an audit using tools that are not perfect, right? There's a lot of these tools, there's tools like SpyFu that'll analyze pay-per-click, and there's, tools like Ahrefs and SEMrush and all these tools that'll analyze like where you're like what the gaps are. That's what in digital marketing sales, for everyone listening, sales and digital marketing is selling to the gaps. Hey, you don't have enough backlinks, or you don't have enough this, or you don't have enough that, or we can improve this, we can improve that. And so it's that's what they look for, gaps, but it doesn't mean that things are wrong. Right? Just and the tools that are used aren't perfect. So like it's hilarious. It's funny once you understand it, but until you understand that they're like, hey, we're going to get your Google business profile ranking so much higher. And you're like, well, we're kind of number one everywhere. So how are you going to do that?
So we're actually like gold too, right? Because our actual market is a suburb, like a northern suburb of Indianapolis. So if they use any key search terms to like prove to me that we don't show up and use the word Indianapolis, or it's not yeah, I'm not going to show up, but that's not
right.
the market I'm trying to penetrate. You know, I'm trying to get the market that's near my actual office.
That's right.
So,
That's right. The northern suburbs of Indianapolis are much more valuable.
For me, because
right.
Indianapolis is a really saturated. There are so many roofing companies here.
Yeah, and that's another thing. It's like, and so these companies are reaching out to you. Hey, you're not ranking for best roofer in Indianapolis.
Yep, exactly.
They're like, so it's not where I want to be. Yeah,
right.
And so, what are let's talk about some of the lessons that you've learned, because you've been through this. You started educating yourself. You've had communications with your account manager at our team. Like, you're starting to really understand what's going on. Well, what are some of the biggest lessons in marketing in general that you've learned? Like, what works for a roofing company? Not just digital, but what do you guys like? What's working at Rojas?
Okay, so a couple of things. Number one is that you need to be monitoring what's going on. So I have my absolute most favorite report that gets done by my office manager is inspections per week. I love this report because it allows me to tell not just how many leads are coming in, right? Because that's kind of a different number.
Yes.
But actually how many of those leads are being booked into inspections, which then could potentially turn into sales. So that's a really important thing to be keeping track of, a broad swath of numbers, because if you're not looking at that, you can't see any trends.
Yes.
1 week you might have 5 inspections and it's just a weird week. It doesn't mean anything. If the very next week you end up with 15 or however, whatever your number is average, right?
Yeah.
So that's the way that it works. It's not necessarily that you're losing all of your leads. There's trends. And if you don't have data to look at those trends, then it can be quite startling if something dips.
What are you looking at in terms of trends? Because, right, you're in a northern market. There's seasonality involved. There's, year to year, there's changes in the storm activity. How are you kind of adjusting for that in the way that you're looking for it at these reports? Are you looking year over year? Are you looking week over week, month over month? What are you looking at a lot of times?
So I tend to go months and then years. I don't usually care too much about week by week.
Yeah.
Because there could be all kinds of crazy things that happen. If there's a snowstorm, we're not going to get any appointments.
That's right. That's right.
So I tend to go month by month, and then I now have enough data that I'm being able to compare years, right? And that is really fun because that's when I can actually see, okay, my marketing is working for me, because if I see an increase of, 100% from 1 year to the next in the month of January, well, something is interesting.
Yes.
Right. Something's going on that is showing me that we're having market presence. So not only is it really important to keep track of all of these numbers, the inspections, the leads, the cost per conversion, the acquisition cost, all those kinds of numbers, but then also talking to my sales reps gives me an idea of, in the actual home, not just what they told me on the phone, because we always ask, how'd you hear about us? That allows us to connect, a revenue or marketing stream. But then they kind of I'll ask the sales rep, so what do you think is making the sale possible? And we have recently really invested in our social media presence, and people are buying from us because they know who we are.
Mm-hmm.
Rather than, I just randomly found a roofer. So we have a really good Google reviews looks good. And then our social media presence is one that we're now building, which of course, a lot of owners are Facebook or Instagram, depending on the age of your owners. My owners are in their 30s and they don't use Instagram. And I was like, guys, come on.
What are you doing? Right?
But anyways, so if you're not using the social media platforms as a way to build brand, right? So you're not going to see this direct ROI, like lead comes in equals sale. It's all about building your brand presence. And a lot of the content that gets put on our social media is not necessarily about roofing. Of course, we have that, right? We want to show off our projects. We want to be able to educate our clientele about, things that they should be looking for in their house or within their own inspections, roofing, that kind of thing. But also just like silly things that happen in the office or, that kind of stuff that people enjoy learning the personalities of the people that work for your company. And quite frankly, Rojas Roofing there's some pretty funny people that work here. So we have a lot of fun, and it's fun to be able to show that to our public.
Yeah, and that gets down like that. Know who we are, and like it's a weird thing online where you get to know people, but they like you don't even know that they know you, right? Like it changes things. It changes the metrics. Now you were talking about like your favorite metric is the inspections per week, but there are also I would guess that as your brand presence, as you're becoming more known in your marketplace, that the conversion rate to sale from inspection potentially could increase. Are you measuring that?
Yeah. So
have you noticed anything as you've seen your brand presence get bigger or more, bigger in the marketplace?
It's hard to say how much of that is our new sales reps that are better than our old sales reps.
True. There's a lot of factors to it, right? Like it's a lot. There's no one thing sometimes, right? Like it can be a combination of everything. The sales reps get better at their job, at their pitch. The lead flow may be better, but the sales reps may be better. Plus, your brand presence is better. There's no one thing. There's no magic pill.
Yeah, it's like trying to solve a social problem. You can't just like throw money at one thing and then all of a sudden it gets better. You have to look at the whole broad spectrum.
The whole broad spectrum, yeah. I had a professor, I remember in college early on, I took an economics class, and he was like, yeah, economics is a science, but it's not science like biology and chemistry because there's people involved.
Yeah.
And when you make people involved in it, like nothing can be perfect because everybody's so much different. I want to go back a little bit. Okay. Inspections per week is your favorite metric. What's your second favorite metric?
Oh gosh. I guess I also enjoy seeing what percentage of our customers are coming from different marketing streams. So if you consider what are the goals of your company, right? So if the goal of your company is to reduce your cost per lead, then the best way to do that is to increase your referrals or your self-generated clients because they cost less than just a direct PPC or something like that. So when I looked at the numbers from 2021 to 2022 as to the percentage of our clientele that was coming from the different revenue streams, there was like this really significant increase in referrals in 2022, which that tells me that our customers are coming back, right? Or they're talking about us, which means that the client experience is positive enough that we're able to generate our own leads, which is, the ultimate goal of a company. They don't have to keep. Well, you're always going to have to keep marketing. That's the number one thing, right? We can't just suddenly like turn off the tap and then, it's going to be great. But you can reduce your cost per lead by having a diversified platform of how your leads are coming in.
For sure. That should be the goal of every company, right? The way I frame it is like where do you get referrals from? Well, from customers that you do a good job for, and they have a great customer experience. Sometimes you have to buy that customer up front.
Yeah.
But like sometimes it does, like you may have to buy someone who will turn into into referrals down the road or repeat business. Like, oh, now it's time to do our siding. Come back and do our siding, right? Like, you did our roof a few years ago. Now we're getting our siding done. Now it's time to call you again. So that repeat and referral business, sometimes you need to buy the first person, right? It's a hard thing to understand. So, but what you're talking about is now from lead sources.
Yeah.
And when you're measuring long term, that's the other thing I love about what you're doing is that you're not just saying, what happened this month? Like, where
it doesn't tell me anything practically.
It doesn't tell you anything. You have to look at the long term picture of things. Where are things improving? How are things increasing? Oh, okay, cool. I think that's a great metric to look at. So when you're looking at your lead sources, what's coming from repeat and referral business? Man, watching that increase year over year, now okay, we're dialing in that customer experience. If it's not increasing, you're not memorable.
Yeah.
Your sales reps aren't asking for the referrals. You're like, they're not knocking the neighbors. They're not doing, like, there may be other things that you're like, okay, well, if we're not getting these referrals, where's why first, right? Like, okay, is it that we're not memorable? I heard a study recently, and I'm going to butcher the numbers, but it was like less than half of people. It was like less than half of people who've gotten their roofs replaced remember the company that did it.
Oh yeah,
they don't even know the name. A year later, they don't remember the company name, and only like 20% of them remember the manufacturer of the shingle.
Yep.
Like it was so terrible.
Yeah.
So just to make sure that they still know who you are, right? Like that they're like, if they don't remember the name of the company, they can't tell someone else to call you.
So here's my some things that we have added to improve the customer experience now that they get added along the way, right? I mean,
yeah, for sure.
Different things that we've added.
At a time, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So we do the thank you cards now as the little personal touch. We do a 3-month text message check-in. And it used to be a phone call, but we weren't getting very good success with people answering the phone. So what we do now is we just send like a 3-month check-in. How is everything good? Send us a thumbs up or a thumbs down.
Yeah.
And then as soon as a thumbs down comes in, like we can immediately respond to, oh, okay, what's wrong? Like tell us what's up. Sometimes it has nothing to do with us, but you know what I mean? Like they want to be reassured that
that's right.
This gutter that we didn't even touch. Oh, that's the problem. Okay. You know what I mean? But like they still feel like we're paying attention. And then we do my newest thing. I'm a fan of this one. It's a happy birthday to your roof postcard. 1 year.
1 year. Right?
1 year. Yeah.
A year later, get them to remember who you are. Because like I said, it was around half of people don't even remember who replaced their roof. So just that postcard might help, right? That's awesome.
Yep.
So do you automate the text messages like using Engage or something like that? So you just set it up like here's a campaign, it goes into an automation and then start sending those out. One thing for people who are listening on this and what you said is, just give us a thumbs up, thumbs down. Like, so what in marketing, and there's a thing that we use, we call it a SPEAR email or a SPEAR text, specific, personal, expecting a response. So think about that when you're writing these kind of things like this, these automated text messages, things like that. Make them specific, right? Just checking in to make sure that your roof is, that everything is well, like that, hey, Brenna, specific, personal. Yeah. This is specifically why I'm reaching out, but phrased in a way that you're expecting a response. I drive my wife crazy, Brenna, because I don't respond to statements.
Oh, okay. Well,
right? Like, I don't know. It's just maybe it's a guy thing. I don't know what it is. But if you don't ask me a question, I'm not responding. Like, if you say, I'm going to the grocery store, Now I know you're going to the grocery store. I've read the text that you're going to the grocery store. If you don't say, do you need something from the grocery store? I don't respond.
You're like, cool. So, glad to hear you're running that errand.
Yep. Good to know. Noted, right? Like, and so for people listening, and if you're setting these things up, make sure that you are writing your automations in a way, writing your, and it doesn't have to be at the end either. This could be, to confirm an appointment.
We have all throughout the process.
Yeah. And so when you're doing it, write them in a way that you're expecting a response. Mm-hmm. Where they know, I need to respond to this. And that gets that engagement, gets people, in the process, right? It gets them bought into the process a lot more. So that's, those little things are interesting. Now that you've been there, now it's been 3 years and you have these years of data, what has you're looking at inspections per week? How does that help now? From are you just looking at it from a marketing perspective? Are you looking at data on the production side? What other aspects of having this data collected for years now has helped the business?
Sure. So some other things that I was able to do this year with the marketing was to say, okay, this is how many leads were put into our system. This is how much each of those leads cost. This is the average cost of a project. And this is our conversion rate. So if we want to achieve this revenue goal, let's work backwards and determine how many leads am I going to need? So how much money am I going to need to spend? But let's just say also, maybe my conversion rate looks really bad for the company. I'm getting all kinds of leads. My leads look fabulous, but they're converting at 20, 15%. So if I increase the percentage of my conversion rate, so in other words, I train my sales staff, then I don't need as many leads. I don't have to spend as much money on marketing because I'm still going to get the same amount of customers coming in and buying from me. So this was the first year that I kind of really looked at that very carefully. And that's when we were like, okay, so one of the really big pushes that we need to do is to really pay attention to the conversion rate.
Yeah, that's an interesting fact. Another company that we worked with, so they started with us in late 2021. We got all their stuff going for 2022, pretty much going into 2022 season. And they had 40% less leads and their revenue was up 20%.
Yeah.
But it was because they worked on every piece of the customer experience. They worked on how the appointment was set. They worked on the show rates of the appointments. They worked on the inspections. They worked on the sales reps pitch at the kitchen table and how their presentation was being made. And they worked on their presentation.
Yep.
They worked on they worked on every little thing and got so dialed in that they were closing at in the mid 50% range out of all the leads that they were. And it's if you're just looking at the leads and saying these leads suck, it's not the only thing.
Oh, I'm glad that you said that lead suck thing, because I would get that kind of my sales reps would be like, Brenna, these leads aren't good. And I would be like, why? And then they would say, oh, it's just repairs or whatever. And I would say, write them down. Tell me how many of them are actually bad, because they have a tendency to go out in the field and they get 1-2 bad ones. It's a massive trend. And never once have they come back and brought me real numbers that showed that these are bad leads. But if you don't have any data, I literally can't do anything with it.
So because then if you only listen to what they're saying, right, then that's all you get. That's the only data you have. Oh, these leads suck. So these leads suck. we had this happen once with a client. They had 2 locations, and they were like, "Hey, our team says these leads suck," and so we went through and we looked at all their closings, and we looked at both of their locations from the same lead flow, and we're like, "Hey, do you know that your other location closes these at like a pretty high percentage?" And they're like, "Let's call them." And so they called their other location. They're like, "Oh yeah, we love these leads. Like,
oh my gosh.
Like, we love these Facebook leads or Google leads or whatever it was." And it was like, okay, so then they realized they have a problem at that other location, right? It wasn't the lead. It was the people working the leads. And that's boy, though, it can all make a difference. The number of times they follow up, how, like if you give them too many leads and they don't feel like they have to follow up on them, they just, because we got 5 more leads coming this,
Yeah.
There's so many things that you can dial in to make it better, right? And it's funny that you say like none of them have come back to you with like actual data.
Nope. Never once has that happened. And I've had it happen, like multiple people have said these to me. I'm like, give me examples, please. And I don't want 1 week's worth of data. Like, I need more than that.
Exactly. It can't be just this week, right?
Yeah.
It's so crazy. So now I want to go, we kind of glossed over social media and what you're doing on social media, and that how, you think, or you have a good feeling that helps people know who you are. And it is, right? It's that organic presence, people seeing you all the time, but also that they get to know the company, right? So, So how have you gone about producing content, and what are your thoughts on producing content for a roofing company?
Yeah. So number 1, it doesn't need to be perfect.
Don't tell them that, Brenna. Don't tell them that. Like, everyone thinks it has to be perfect.
Yeah.
It does. It has to be perfect, Brenna.
No, I mean, most of the stuff. Oh, so to lead into that, then is it also doesn't need to just be you, aka the owner. So if you are too busy to care about social media, don't care about it. Give it to someone else who's gonna be able to speak comfortably on camera that doesn't care. So I kept trying to be like, well, I can't make any content because my owners, they can't get it to me or whatever. And then at a certain point, I was just like, I could just do it. I could just be the one that's on social media. That'll work. And I don't care if it's perfect, right? It's pretty rare that I will do more than 2 takes of anything that I put up, because I don't need to. It doesn't have to be perfect. My face doesn't have to look, you know what I mean? Like, everybody's like, oh, I hate the sound of my voice or whatever it is. It's just like, well, that sucks because you sound like that to everybody else. So.
To everyone all the time. So, yeah. That's how you sound.
Just get over it. Like, that's just what you sound like.
Another thing, my wife thinks I'm weird because I'll go back and edit videos and things like that, and I'm always like, she's like, "How do you listen to yourself like that?" And I'm like, "I don't. That's how I sound. Like, I just care. Like, that's what it is." Yeah,
and I don't care about editing. Like, I can watch the video 1 billion times. Once it's actually posted and it shows up in my personal feed, I'm like, no, thank you. I don't want to watch it. But yeah, definitely, like, in terms of what you should post, it should be. The number 1 question that I always say to myself is, would I want to watch that? If I'm just sitting in my bed trying to fall asleep, or I just got off, I'm at the dentist office waiting to see my doctor, would I push past it? Or would it catch my attention for at least a minute? And that's how it's determined. Like, not everything is going to catch every person's attention. So you have to have a variety of stuff that you put out there. So some people really like transformation videos. Some people really prefer to have somebody explaining something to them. Some people like funny things, And we have stuff that we post on different platforms. Depending on the audience, we might modify it or that kind of thing to engage with the the people who are on that social media platform.
Yeah. Because there's different audiences on different platforms, but let's make it real simple. So first, just do social media. Doesn't have to be perfect. Doesn't have to be the owner. Someone has to.
Yeah.
Someone
that kind of likes it.
Yes.
So it'll help. The office manager at my work, she's very creative when it comes to like coming up with ideas for social media content. She doesn't particularly want to be in the videos. So she helps me like come up with ideas and then I produce them. Yeah.
Yeah. So it can be a team effort.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So if we had to like create like some like 3 or 4 buckets of the types of content, I heard you mention a couple like transformation and different things. Like if you had to create like to simplify it for someone like, hey, just start with these, like, or these themes or these, like something like that. What would you start with now that you've done it for a while and are getting some good traction?
So the transformation is the easiest one to do because no one's face has to be in them.
Explain a transformation video.
So I've done it 2 different ways. I've done just a simple like company cam will do it for you before after photo. Okay, easy. I've also done ones where there's been like a massive multifaceted exteriors renovation. So like painting, siding, the whole thing. And I'll drag it out for a whole week. I'll post, and not everyone's going to see all of the pieces of content.
Of course.
But I'll start with like, this is what it looked like originally. And then we'll add layers and talk about the customer journey. And if you can button that up with a testimonial video at the end, like, wow.
Oh, goodness.
If you can't, that's okay. It's still like a cool transformation to see, how the customer's pain points were addressed in this transformation. Plus, it's pretty, right? People like to look at pretty things.
That's a good point, though, how the customer's pain points were addressed. Because people don't, like, they want to, you want them to see themselves in the posts.
Yeah.
You want prospective customers to see themselves or understand the pain points, right? I talked to someone recently and they were like, once we started like going into extreme detail about our process and how like what's going to happen, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Like, look, this is construction. Like we're tearing off your, like there's like, and they really got into those details and the dirty details and like that, but then what comes out of it, right? And how they manage all of those challenges along the way, like when they started doing that, they do that in their sales presentations a lot more. This company I was talking to, and it was like that changed things, like because it changed the expectation of the homeowner. Mm-hmm. And so like thinking of that is what it made me think of that when you're talking about like you could do it through the whole week. Like here, this is where we're starting. This is what happened next. This is what's going on. On a one-day install, you may have multiple points during the day, right? Milestones during the day. Here's what it looks like when we get to a job site. Here's what it looks like during the tear off. Here's what it looks like after that. Here's what, right? And here's what, and then here's the final product. And then here's the cleanup process that we do.
Yep.
So you can, framing those stages and getting into more detail, I guarantee no one in your area, very few, if any, are doing that.
Yeah. Well, nobody wants to see the ugly parts.
No. Right? Why show the ugly part, right?
Nobody wants to see how much, trash is in the dumpster or whatever it is. And then the other thing is, I think because roofing is such a very fast process, right? So you can do a roof in 1 to 3 days is like you got a big roof or something was really wrong with it, right? So I think that the customers somehow, I don't know what they think. Like, because we'll have people be like, just so you know, I found 3 nails. And you're like, do you know how many nails were torn off of your roof, man? Like, Thank you for telling us. We absolutely don't want you to have 3 nails, but at the same time, like, you had a major renovation.
A perspective, right? Like, the number of this is the number of nails that are in your roof currently. As we tear them off, this is what's happening, right?
They're flying everywhere.
They're flying everywhere, right? Like, this is like going through that. That would be an amazing video, right? Like, that would be an amazing content. So, so now you have that. You're talking about, like, you have the team doing it. Like, are you guys just shooting content yourself? Or do you have a professional that comes in, or you just like, hey, pull out the phone and start going?
So we do a combination. When we first started, it was all just phone, right? I mean, that's what we had access to. I did partner with someone that's what he does, right? He creates social media for his customers. And so he is in charge of filming a lot of the content that we do now. He's also, because that's what he does every day, like, he also thinks about, how can I make whatever you're showing me into something that some people would want to watch. So my most favorite silly one that we did was, I said, it was like a warranty reel, and it was like something like, is your brand new roof leaking? Or I don't remember what I said, something along the lines of like, you just got a brand new roof and it's only 2 years old and it's already leaking. Who are you going to call? And then, like, after he did the whole, like, he filmed it, I was like, you have to put the Ghostbusters theme. Because I coincidentally said, who are you going to call?
That's right. So you have to at least, like, flash it on the screen a little bit.
And that's exactly what we did. And I don't know if other people liked it. I mean, I could look into the data and see how many people watched it or whatever, but, like, I thought it was funny.
The part of it is, so that's something to talk about, is to have fun with it too.
Yeah.
Right? Have fun with it too. Where did you find this person that you're working with? Because I think that's a big challenge where they're like, I don't know, how do I find a videographer? How do I find someone that...
So I just got really lucky, to be perfectly frank. He walked into our office and was like, do you need someone to do social media? And I was like, what do you got?
Yeah.
But you could try... I think that there's more and more people who are good at this kind of thing, that are starting to realize that they can work for themselves. Yeah. So you might be surprised as to, like, who is out there in the, I would say, like, if you like the content of a local business, ask them how they're getting their stuff done. Because there's a plethora of prices that would be out there.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you got to find somebody that's going to fit your budget and whatnot.
Tens to hundreds of thousands of dollars on video production. Yeah. If you went that route, but I think you need that good mix of some professional stuff and the authentic. Just film it on your phone. Just have some fun with it. What do you think the greatest insight is that you could share with the audience that's helped Rojas be successful in their roofing business?
Man, that is a heck of a question. The greatest insight?
Your greatest insight, right?
I'm going to say adaptability. So if you can't change what you're doing based off of what you're seeing, the trends, that didn't work, let's try it again. But also be able to bounce back from that failure, like, that's a part of adaptability. And I think that is what has made Rojas successful, because we didn't know what we were doing. Not really. Everybody was like, we know about roofing. And I was like, I know about ESL. You know what I mean? But, like, how do we build a business? I mean, anybody that's building a business is going to make a bunch of mistakes. But to be able to learn from those mistakes, adapt, change, continue to grow and be better, that's what's going to ultimately make someone successful.
Awesome. This has been another episode of the Roofing Success Podcast. If you would like to generate more revenue through your digital marketing efforts, please visit roofermarketers.com to get a copy of the book, The Best Known Roofer. Also, check the training section of the website for guides on everything from running effective pay-per-click ads to how to properly set up your Google My Business listing. Thanks for listening.